sounds. Let's try with something more complex. Most of those sounds will be mono or mono 2, mono 3, etc. What we got in here, first thing is we got a second oscillator synced to the first oscillator. To make that audible, you should put your second oscillator above in pitch related to the first oscillator. When it's below, the effect is really subtle, but when it's above, it's more pronounced. What we got also here is on the modulation matrix, we got note velocity as the source of two things. First is oscillator 2 pitch, and the second is VCF frequency. What it means, the harder I play, the higher I go with the VCF frequency and the oscillator 2 pitch, and while the second oscillator is synced to the first one, it's not changing the pitch of the oscillator itself, but rather the sound of the oscillator. It will create really dynamic sound. We got doesn't really matter, it's inverted, but there's no filter envelope at all here. There is no resonance on the filter at all. There is some keyboard tracking. And on the effects section, we got EQ, delay, reverb, but the really important thing is that rock amp, which will add some distortion to the sound. I wish to. I'm not going to show every possibility here. Just go around and mess with those settings. The most important concept here is that the more preamp gain here, the more overall distortion effect. So I went 0 on the level to not, distort the signal at the output, but instead to distort it a little here. I can show you the difference. Here is a low end distortion, put to 0, kinda mid gain, high gain, and the overall low and high gain here with the cabinet simulation off. That's really important. The cabinet simulator will filter a lot of fun stuff. And on the EQ side, it's not really that important. So I will show you without the effects here. And with. That's it. Okay, let's go with another complex sound. What we got in here is kinda flute sound, but we will create kinda bandpass filtering here. The built-in high-pass filter on the Deepmind not goes high enough to use it as a source to create bandpass filter. Bandpass filtering is when you put high pass and low pass and put them kinda parallel to each other, creating bandpass. So you only pass certain bands through the filter. So there is a VCF set, and on the effects section we got a mood filter, which is kind of Moog filter emulation, and here initially there is some depth of modulation with some speed, which sounds like this. We don't want that, so put the depth to 0. Some resonance, frequency, taste to match kind of the frequency of the VCF filter. And on the modulation matrix, there is envelope 2, which controls the envelope of the Deepmind filter, and it's also controlled the depth on the FX1, which is our mood filter frequency. The mood filter is set to high pass mode. So now we got the low pass and the high pass moving each other, creating bypass effect. What else we got here is portamento, just a little, and some reverb, delay and stuff, and some just a little distortion from the rock amp, and the vibrato from the LFO2, which is set here, LFO2 modulating oscillator 1 and 2 fine. And there is also note number that controls FX4 filter, FX4 level. This is I put that here because overall the lower notes sounds much louder than the higher notes, so this is to compensate it. And there is some note number controlling the high pass mood filter frequency, and the note velocity that opens it a little bit more or less to create it, to make it more dynamic. No velocity sensitive on VCA, and a little velocity sensitive on VCF. Static pulse width modulation, and sub oscillator, which is same octave than the initial one, but I believe there is oscillator drift, which when you have two oscillators working together will create subtle chorusing detuning effect between each other. Next one. Slow saw lead sound. The most important concept, or maybe the feature I want to show you here, is how important this setting is. When you put it in red trig mode, each time you play the note, the envelopes red triggers, and with sound like this, when you want to play legato lines or lead lines, it's really counterproductive. We got really slow envelope, amp envelope is slow, VCF envelope is slow, long attack, long release. So when creating patches like this and you want use it as lead sounds, start with that setting. Other than that, typical enhancer, reverb, delay, just to add some space. It's just simple saw without the second oscillator, without any modes. That's it. This one is interesting. We got a mode wheel to control the VCF. So you can use mode wheel if you like on your keyboard to control the cutoff frequency, because that's the core of that sound. Because basically it's really plain dirty sound. We got some distortion and delay, a lot of reverb, and a lot of funky, funny settings on the oscillators. Actually, just put it the way it sounds most crazy or maybe dark, disordered. But the core of the sound is here. We got a filter resonance really high, the point where it just starts to self-oscillate. And now, when you either buy a mode wheel or manually change the filter frequency cutoff point, it sounds like this. Kind of psycho, creepy sound. VCA is just fully open. VCF with just slight attack. Generated by half the way of the sustain here. And that's it. Envelope, 0. No other modulations. No keyboard. Yep, that's it. Something simpler now, just a straight flute sound. Both oscillators, I mean both shapes. Just a static pulse width. The more the pulse width modulation, the thinner the sound. So just apply the taste. And that's it. There is no envelope on the filter. There is slight LFO 2 modulation on the filter frequency to add subtle vibrato sound. No velocity sensitive. That velocity sensitive here doesn't really matter because the envelope is set to 0. There is a new thing here, which is pressure on the VCF frequency. The pressure is aftertouch. So when you press keys harder after you initially play a note, you can create kinda additional manual vibrato sound. Yep, and I think that's it. I think there's no pitch mode, so all the vibrato you hear, really subtle comes from the LFO modulation on the filter frequency here, and straight delay and reverb on the effect side. Classic lead sound. We got some chorus in here, which is kinda important here. Without the chorus it sounds like this. Kinda dull. So the chorus and delay reverb, just a taste. We got a sub oscillator, 1 octave below the initial one, and filter is quite open with no resonance. You can add some if you like. It sounds fine with or without the resonance. Just a little bit of envelope to add some initial attack. Just a little decay on the VCF envelope and sustain. Yeah, and important thing is to add that spicy we got when playing the legato lines is to put where it is, portamento mode. Difference between normal and the previous settings we are using is that when it's on normal, even if you separate the notes that you play, it still glides between the notes. So just put some portamento here, and now each note somehow is attacked from above or below with really quick glide. That's it. Another funky-like lead sound. There is some slight distortion, delay and reverb as typical. Delay is kind of present here, as the sound is kind of thin, to add some movement, more space to the sound itself. VCA quite open, and the VCA quite open. Yeah, VCF sustain is set to 0 and envelope like half the way up to create some interesting filter sweeps with delay. It's even more audible. Two-pole filter, you can close it if you like to make it more classic or open. To make it more modern maybe. Yeah, and I think that's all. It's just simple one saw oscillator with little filter sweeps, boost on low frequencies. That's it. If you remove the envelope, it's simple bassoon-like sound. Next sound, distortion organ. So there is a rock amp, which is our distortion source. Without the distortion, it sounds like this. Without the sub oscillator, it's just simple filtered saw wave. Nothing really exciting. Sorry. And sorry, this one. And the sub oscillator here is pitched all the way down, 1 octave below, without anything else. There's no pitch mod, there is no square wave on the main oscillator. Boost on the low frequencies, typical for most of our patches. VCF envelope shape. Yep, that's it. And the last lead sound is simple, sweet. Soul plus square wave. No sub oscillator. The pulse width modulation is just to taste, doesn't really do much. There are two unison oscillators here, slightly detuned, one from each other. The frequency is set to 0, but what we got here is there's also no envelope. Frequency at 0, envelope on 0, there is some resonance, but, and keyboard tracking, but why it sounds so bright? Because we got on the modulation matrix, we got node velocity as a source and the VCF frequency as a destination with really high depth. What it does when I play the note really subtle, filter is closed, and when I play it harder, it starts to open. But it's not a filler sweep, it's just opening right away. That's the difference between putting that modulation here or velocity sense here. The velocity sensitive on VCF edit section adds more or less envelope modulation related to the velocity of notes you play, and straight away note velocity here just opens or closes the filter like this. Thanks to this, the sound is much more dynamic. And of course, typical stuff like delay, reverb, enhancer. This enhancer, by the way, works only, it's enhancing stereo field only of the delay and reverb sound as we are in the send mode. Yeah. So let's go to the next category, which will be keys and brass sounds.